Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am so excited about today's episode and also our featured guest and fellow entrepreneur, because this is somebody who not only is incredible at what he does, and he provides such a valuable service for all of the clients that he serves, but I also admire the way that he has built a lifestyle business as he is a full-time digital nomad, just traveling the world. And today he's joining us from Mexico. Super grateful that he's carved time out of his very exciting lifestyle and business to sit with us today and share so much. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Alex Ostrov. You'll find Alex scaling a volcano in Guatemala at times and then making it back to his computer for a 9 a.m. call to run his holdco clients through the numbers on their current mergers and acquisition deal. Opting to serve hands-on operators, Alex provides a full finance function and fractional CFO services to support entrepreneurs with multiple businesses and looking to scale their portfolios with scaling to $25 million and more in revenue. Working with entrepreneurial individuals and teams who love being hands-on support with their portfolio businesses is where Alex shines as a strategic financial partner who can provide grounded, fast, accurate, and high ROI services while being able to tap into the specific mindset of hands-on operators. So if you are hungry for growth and scale, and you have always had that suspicion that the answers might just be in your numbers, Alex is your guy. We're going to learn a lot today, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Alex Ostrov. All right, Alex, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be on here.
Heck yes. I'm so excited to dive into all the things that you do through your business, but I'm also excited to dive into the lifestyle business that you've created. So, Alex, I'm going to start with you. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Alex? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the professional side might not be as interesting given I am an accountant by nature. But I guess we can trace my journey back to 2020. I was working for a Big Four company, and Big Four accounting firm, I should say, on the island of Bermuda, and the pandemic hit. Everyone, like myself, like everyone else, was forced to work remotely, and I had my first taste of not being in an office from 9 to 5, and after a couple of months, I just knew that I could never go back. So as things kind of normalized, I guess you could say, they were asking us to go back into office, and right then I went to LinkedIn. I threw out a few applications. I sent some direct messages to CEOs and recruiters, and before I knew it, I landed my first remote job working as a financial controller for a tech company. I was with them for about 3 years, and I was really embracing the remote work lifestyle. So within those 3 years, I was traveling. I think I hit about 35 countries. Mainly I focused on Latin America, but I spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, as well as some time in Europe and Africa. So that kind of brings me to my my entrepreneurship journey. Traveling, I met lots of different people, some working remote, some entrepreneurs, and I kind of really learned that for myself, I wanted to have more freedom, because although I was traveling, I was in great places, I was still kind of stuck to a desk most of the days. So that's when I decided that I was going to branch out on my own, and at that time, I had my employer that was fully on board with transitioning me into kind of a contractor role and scaling back my work. And then I was fortunate enough to have another prospective client fall in my lap. So, come November 2023, I decided to launch Nomad CPA, and that is my accounting, bookkeeping, CFO, kind of full financial function business. And I work with specifically entrepreneurs that scale up and want to run multiple businesses because, for one, I find it extremely fascinating, entrepreneurship in general. But when someone can run multiple businesses and, run them effectively and manage the time between them, it's really, you can see the passion in their eyes and you can see, the drive. And, I find that similar to myself. So I want to work with them and help them really take their existing businesses and new businesses to new heights.
Yeah, I really appreciate that overview, Alex, because truth be told, you've already revealed the two things that made our team so excited to reach out to you and invite you to come on the show. First and foremost, I love the name of your company, Nomad CPA, and the fact that you scooped up that domain of nomad.cpa. Incredible. Huge shout out to you there. We're obviously going to drop that link again at the end of today's episode. But even beyond that, it's what you just revealed at the end of your overview there about your appreciation and your passion for and how much you can serve and help entrepreneurs who do have multiple entities. As an entrepreneur for 17 years myself, I've got 5 businesses in my portfolio, so I very much appreciate the holding company approach. But Alex, in 1,400 episodes, I don't think we've talked about holding companies here on the show just yet, and I know a lot of multipreneurs don't understand the right systems and foundation to set them up for success to unlock financial performance across their portfolio. So introduce us to why holding companies. You focus so much on that. What does that structure look like and what can it unlock inside of our portfolios?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess to preface it, when I worked in Bermuda, I was mainly focused on the wealth asset management side, and that was with mainly private equity and hedge funds. And working with these private equity companies, that's really kind of what got me interested in, businesses that own multiple businesses, because their portfolios are trying to grow their operating companies as much as possible and get return on value. And although that was kind of where I was first leaning to pivot into, it wasn't fully aligned with what I want to do, working with strictly private equity funds. I work with some entrepreneurs that have backing with private equity, but I mainly want to focus on those entrepreneurs that, just really love either, bootstrapping a business from scratch or acquiring a business and, trying to improve it, whether, operationally or, through acquiring other businesses and improving through vertical integration or things like that. So that's where I pivoted my focus to, is really trying to work with these entrepreneurs and take something that they're already doing great, which is mainly on the operations side, getting down and dirty within the business, but then helping them by being their financial partner. There's a lot of things that can be done to gain efficiencies when you're scaling, and that's through centralizing the finance process, amongst other things. You can centralize HR, marketing, pretty much everything, but my focus is to really help them implement the right systems and, establish contracts with vendors and things like that, so that not only one of their businesses can benefit from my work, but they can all benefit collectively.
Alex, for so many people who have probably never worked with a CFO just yet, I feel like you just opened up the CFO toolkit to us right there, because you rattled off so many different things that you look at as levers for growth. I mean, just in that very brief answer, you already touched on financing and funding options. And I hear so many entrepreneurs question, should I get an SBA loan? Should I finally reply to those Stripe emails that I always get saying, hey, Stripe will just give me money? There's so many complexities behind all of that. You also talked about the nature of understanding your numbers, is that there are answers within those numbers. So Alex, I'm going to totally put you on the spot here, because I think too many people realize, oh, maybe I don't have a full-time CFO, but we live in this beautiful era where there are fractional CFOs such as yourself. What does that toolkit look like? How do you walk into a business or a holding company with multiple businesses? How do you even start to analyze where all those opportunities are hidden?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian. I would say the first thing that needs to be done is assessing what does the entrepreneur, what does my client want? Because I can, look at their numbers and proactively rattle off a number of improvements that they could make. But if it's not in line with what they're trying to achieve, some of them, they just want to grow the businesses, be part of them, and treat their employees well, treat their customers well. Great. Some of them, they want to build a portfolio, sell it all off, go retire, sail the world on a sailboat. So that's kind of the first step, is looking at their medium and long-term plans. And then from there, I can really dive in and make sure that, not only the businesses are structured to be able to help achieve that, but that they're taking the right steps, which will allow them to, make choices which will help them ultimately reach their goals.
Alex, hearing you say that, I imagine the reaction of a lot of listeners and a lot of fellow entrepreneurs where our books usually are things that feel like punishment, that we have to pay attention to them around tax time, we have to clean them up, we have to organize them. There's obviously so much that we have to do from a compliance perspective. Most people have not used their books just yet to unlock business answers and to unlock growth opportunities. So when you say, look at their numbers, look at their books, look behind their business, what is the emotional reaction that goes on at that level when you interact with those clients? And then what does that process look like in a fun and engaging and empowering way, I guess is the ultimate word that I'm looking for, in an empowering way that invites them to view this function and view these books and these financial statements as answers?
Yeah, another great question, and you're right. Most entrepreneurs, they're too busy in the business. A lot of them don't love the numbers, so they don't really dive into them. They have, an outsourced bookkeeper, an internal bookkeeper. They have a CPA to file their taxes, and as long as they file their taxes, make their payments to the IRS, then they're fine. They think that everything is, everything's taken care of on the financial side, but. If you really want to dissect your business and look at opportunities, then the numbers tell the story. The numbers tell the story, and they can help kind of show you where you're going to be in the future. So really diving in, making sure that their numbers are accurate. Oftentimes, the numbers are pulled together, I don't want to say not terribly, but, oftentimes not great. And it's just because they don't have the direction of what they need those numbers for. So really going through, cleaning up those books is the first step. And then from there, providing them a tight cadence. So certain time each month, they're going to get those numbers. They're going to see how those compare to prior periods. They can see how those compare to what they expected, and ultimately be able to use those numbers for making smarter decisions, whether that's buying another piece of equipment, expanding into another office space, and so on and so forth.
Alex, I'm going to totally put you on the spot here and really geek out because I know it'll benefit a lot of listeners here, but I'll use myself as the example because that'll be easy for me to do, is that having a portfolio of, in my case, 5 companies, for example, every month when our bookkeeper goes through our books, Alex, there's decisions that have to be made, and then of course I make decisions from there, but some of those decisions are allocation. For example, I use ChatGPT. Well, I use it for the benefit of all of my companies, and so where is that expense allocated to? And so I guess zooming way out, my question to you and putting you on the spot for some of the kind of technical stuff of what you do, but I trust fully that you're going to make it engaging and useful for all of our listeners, is why do we care about correctly allocating? Why is that allocation so important? And how do we correctly allocate these expenses? Because a lot of these things do transfer across. It's part of the beauty of holding companies, I believe, is that you can leverage resources and team members and knowledge across the entire spectrum of your business portfolio. So it's a loaded question. I know that the inner accountant in you is going to nail it. So guide us through all those questions.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of ways I could go about answering this question, and I don't want to give away all my secrets, but having a portfolio of companies and having a main holding company, it definitely provides a lot of flexibility. And in this allocation, again, it comes back to what are the objectives of not only the holding company but the individual companies. Maybe some of them. You need cleaner books because you want to get that loan in the next year. So, maybe you change the allocation based off of, this one's already in a loss position. Let's allocate a little more to here. You can get technical within, obviously, there are some restraints there, but from an allocation perspective, if you're not allocating, you're really missing out on a lot of valuable information. For instance, if you have a whole fully centralized, sales department, and you're putting it all to the holding company, you're not allocating it to the different companies, then, the cost of acquisition for one company can look can look great. Another one could look pretty good, but then when you put the cost that those sales members are, the time that they're spending to close a deal, or the follow-ups, the tools they're using, if those aren't being allocated properly, then you're really having some misinformation. Maybe these clients or customers that you're acquiring aren't as profitable. Maybe you need to up your pricing to make it profitable, but if you don't do those allocations properly, then you're not going to get a complete picture. And again, it comes back to, you're not going to be able to make informed decisions, and it's just going to make reaching your ultimate goals more difficult.
Hearing you talk about that, Alex, I feel like this is something that a lot of us have heard the word profit, and we just inherently say, yeah, no, profitable. That's very easy. If I charge somebody $20,000 for something and my costs are $5,000, that's $15,000 in profit. But a lot of this stuff that you're really shedding a light on is that people aren't necessarily tracking how much time has gone into closing the deal, how much time has gone into fulfilling the deal, how much time and money and resources have gone into the tools that we use throughout this entire process. So it's definitely a much deeper level of financial complexity that illuminates those answers. But Alex, a lot of people are probably thinking to themselves, hearing the way you talk about this, I don't track all that stuff. I don't even know where all of these things are coming from. What's the first step in me finding these answers and really enabling someone such as yourself to come in and be armed with the right information and data?
Yeah, the first step is to track the data, whether you're tracking the data properly or improperly. Having a centralized system to store it. Something even as simple as QuickBooks, which isn't so simple anymore. It has a kind of a wealth of capabilities to it now. But using a system so that all the data can be stored, and making sure that at least all your transactions are being compiled will be, it'll definitely make things a lot easier for someone like myself coming in, knowing that you don't have to go through years and years of information. There's obviously other things you can do. There's other tools. There's different softwares, especially for myself. If I'm focusing on holding companies, there's different consolidation tools. There's different AI tools that you can use. But again, it's dependent on what the businesses are, what their main drivers are, what they're trying to achieve. Because if you look at a service business, it's going to look a lot different than, say, a retail business. Service business might be focused more on quality of customer, while the retail business might be more focused on gross margin, because that's really what's going to drive improvement in the business overall.
Alex, it's really encouraging hearing the way that you talk about these things, because I feel like it goes counter to a lot of the traditional entrepreneurial advice that I certainly wanted to ignore, and that I certainly have ignored, because so many people tell us, oh, focus on one thing, only focus on one business, and even within that business, niche down to such a crazy level that you get to own that corner of the market. I have found massive benefits in having a portfolio of businesses because of some of the reasons I've already listed, and then some of the ones that you've already listed. You gave that example, a very tangible example that I love, of having that centralized sales team that can unlock sales across the entire spectrum of your businesses. Alex, what's your answer and your advice and your counterpoint to that? I'll call it traditional is the nicest way that I'll phrase it. What's your counter to that traditional advice of just honing in on that one thing? Because you see a lot of businesses flourish thanks to their portfolio. How would you navigate entrepreneurs through that debate, I'll say?
Yeah, well, especially if you're an entrepreneur that is running multiple businesses, as you know, your time can get occupied very quickly. You could be diving into things that probably don't need as much focus. There could be others where they're not garnishing enough of your focus. So really, what's needed is to set up the proper team, and that starts at the holding company level. If you set up the proper structure, whether that's your sales department, your HR department, because someone may be focused or may have more experience, in one of your businesses, doesn't mean that they can't provide useful guidance in other businesses. Obviously, if they don't have the expertise in one of the businesses, then you'll want to make sure that there's someone hired within those business so that they can make those decisions. So it's not so much as focusing on one one fine area of each business and really finding the technical expertise for that. But it's, making sure that you have a team that will be able to manage those that do have that expertise and can find, those very fine details.
Yeah, so well said. Gosh, Alex, I know that sometimes this is not the most appealing topic that people want to geek out about, but you do it in a way that, I'll tell you, as someone on the other side of this conversation, you just make me want to be more organized. You make me want to make smarter decisions across all of the businesses and really achieve that growth that you've helped deliver to so many of your clients. And I knew that time would fly by with you today, so I want to switch gears a little bit to your personal lifestyle business side of the world, because I so admire the way that you've structured all of that. And a lot of people think, oh yeah, digital nomad, nomadic entrepreneurs. It sounds cool in theory, but it introduces more complexities, more logistics, and certainly more operational questions. What's your answer to that? Because you've obviously found a way to do it in a very smart and structured way while still achieving that lifestyle flexibility. So how do you achieve that balance? Because they sound like opposite spectrums, structure, but also freedom. Alex, take us behind the scenes into your lifestyle business.
Yeah, for sure. Well, just as you're an entrepreneur in a business, you're an entrepreneur for your own life as well. You get to create the life you want, and some people forget that when they're stuck in that grind mode, really trying to grow their businesses. But I like to think that they can be done hand in hand. I am very bad at planning. All my organization skills I try to pour into the business aspects. So I like to keep my personal life more, laissez-faire, more go with the flow. So for instance, I know I'm in Mexico right now. I don't know where I'm going to be in 2 weeks. I'm going to be traveling for a bit, and then I might have an opportunity, maybe a fellow entrepreneur or a friend will be somewhere else. So I'll jump on a plane and go see them. My lifestyle is definitely not for everyone. A lot of people like to have stability, and don't get me wrong, I like stability as well. So that's why I usually go park myself somewhere for a few months at a time, so I can get in that routine. Not only for my personal sanity and for health reasons and things like that, but also for the professional side. Because at the end of the day, the reason that I can live this lifestyle is because I can deliver value to my clients, and they will want to pay for my services. So that's usually at the forefront, is making sure that my lifestyle will not hinder the business side of things. But other than that, it's just kind of take it day by day or week by week.
Yeah, I love those insights. I'm super appreciative of you sharing this side of it with us. I've got to ask you, what's the hardest part of all that? How do you structure it in a way that works for you and for your clients? Because the one thing that I'm terrible at when I do travel, I love working from coffee shops almost every single day. If I'm not in the podcast studio, then I'm in a coffee shop somewhere. And Alex, for me, if I'm in coffee shops, I feel so weird being on conference calls. I feel like I have to tone my personality and certainly my volume down so much. What are some of those logistical things that you found in your workflow? What's some of the hardest parts of it? And then how have you structured those client engagements in a way that works for everybody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a couple non-negotiables for me. One, when I'm traveling, I'll find a place that has great Wi-Fi and is comfortable for working, because, like you said, going to coffee shops, taking calls, it's not great for yourself. It's not great for your clients. So I try to stay away from that. I'll plan it so most of my calls are certain days, and then on those off days when I just need to work, I'll go to a coffee shop or I'll go to a co-working, so that I can, see the outside world and really get to enjoy wherever I am. But from another work perspective, I make sure that I don't want to sacrifice my work, like I said. So I never change times of meetings. If I have recurring meetings, those stay the same. I'm not going to fault clients. I'm not going to fault my team for the hours that, whatever time zone I'm in. So, sometimes I'll be getting up at 5 a.m. for a call because I'll be on the West Coast. Other times I'll be in Southeast Asia, and I'll be, dialing into a call at 8 p.m. So that is probably the most difficult thing, is making sure that I can, get my body fine-tuned for those changes.
Yeah, kudos to you. Gosh, I don't think I've ever talked to a nomadic entrepreneur that is that disciplined when it comes to those recurring call times, that you will make it work no matter what. And I will say, as someone who's working with you, that's got to be a really good feeling, knowing that you're always going to be there. You will make it work on your end. And that's a really cool commitment from your side of the world. I've got to ask you, since we're having this conversation so early on in the new year, 2026 is going to be such a fun year with regards to tech innovations and industry disruptions, and obviously AI is a part of so many of our conversations. How are you behind the scenes as a founder, as a nomad, and just as a person? What are some of those interesting ways that you're leveraging AI to make your businesses run smoother, to make your team operate better, to make your life easier? Because I feel like your life, Alex, also has logistics that you have to figure out along the way as well. So how's AI playing into all this stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question. I definitely would say I use AI more for the personal side. I use it on the business side as well, but with my type of work, I'm dealing with sensitive information. I'm dealing with client financial data, maybe their customer data, so I have to be truly sensitive to that. I'm fortunate for a lot of the redundant work. AI is quickly increasing its capabilities. If you look at the ERP systems, whether that's Sage, Intact. I use one of my clients uses Dynamics, Microsoft Dynamics, and they have built-in AI tools into it with QuickBooks. The AI advances there have been great. So it's really helping with things like bookkeeping, month-end close, maybe some of the simple accounting schedules that I have, or even financial modeling. I can basically have a full financial model done if I'm working on an M&A deal with a client, just to get the template and then insert the correct data so that I'm not feeding their sensitive data into these models. But then on the personal side, like I said, I'm not very organized in that regard, and as you can imagine, a lot of flights, a lot of hotels, so I'm really trying to leverage it to get me more organized with where I'm going to go, where I'm going to stay, how I'm going to best maximize my time away from the computer. I want to make sure that I'm actually enjoying where I'm traveling to. So kind of helping with my itinerary. I don't have an executive assistant, but I'm using AI as one. It's been working pretty well so far.
Yeah, I love that. Really appreciative of the real world insights and all of those considerations. I've got to ask you, because you did shout out QuickBooks, and obviously that's the name and the tool that a lot of us know. It's obviously the most mainstream, but I hope that this episode is the one where a lot of listeners say, okay, it's time for me to start taking this stuff more seriously. What are some of your favorite tools? What should be on our radar when it comes to the financial side of our businesses?
Yeah, great question. I feel like I'm a broken record by saying this, but again, it's very dependent on the business. One for myself, which I use with every client, it's called Fathom, and that's a consolidation tool. I would be spending hours on hours more if I didn't have this. Hopefully, after this, maybe I'll get a partnership with them, but it really helps by pulling in the individual business financials and looking at it from a consolidated view. So, you get to see not only how they're doing individually, but you get to see how your portfolio is doing. It helps with forecasting, things like that. So it's a great financial tool if, that's what you want to use it for. Otherwise, I think having a good project management tool is very important. I usually get brought into whatever project management tool my clients are using, whether that's Notion or Monday or things along those lines. And I don't think the tool itself really matters. It's all about how you implement it. So one thing I've seen, and this is kind of from a non-financial perspective, from an operational perspective, are all these great different software vendors, selling you these grand products. You think you get a great deal because the price is low and you think it's going to completely change your business, but it ends up really not helping, maybe even making things worse. So one thing that I would definitely suggest to anyone out there is, before you bring on any tool, make sure that your processes are refined manually. If you can't do it, with a simple spreadsheet, with a doc, then you're probably not going to be able to do it with one of these fancy tools that are coming out.
Yes, so true. The tool is never going to fix it. You can't just hand me a hammer and all of a sudden I'm unbelievable at building things, because I'm absolutely not. And so I love that emphasis there. But Alex, save that advice, because my final question, here it is, and it's super broad. You can take it in any direction you want, and that is, what is your best piece of advice for listeners? We've covered so much ground in today's conversation, and remember, we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys. So as one of us, as a fellow entrepreneur, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
For sure. I'd say my biggest piece of advice would be, you don't have to fully dive in the deep end. I've dealt with entrepreneurs that are, have a super high risk tolerance. Someone like myself, an accountant, we're, inherently more risk adverse, but you can be somewhere in between. If you want to get into the entrepreneurship journey, you don't need to fully quit your W-2 job or whatever and fully commit to starting a business or buying a business. You can do what I did, for example. You can talk to your company, see if you can scale back, go on as a contractor, and then from there it gives you more flexibility to work with other businesses or start another business. So that would be probably the biggest piece of advice I have. And then another one is, never be closed off. Just because, you might be a podcaster doesn't mean you can, work with a construction company or something like that. Just because your expertise is in one area does not mean that you can't excel in another. So be open when opportunities come up. When people present you opportunities, always listen to them. Most of them you want to take with a grain of salt, but it's really just being open to whatever comes at you.
Yes. Oh, I love that advice for our listeners. Such incredible pieces of advice. And that second part, especially about not being closed off. Alex, in my 17 years of being an entrepreneur, I cannot tell you how many of my biggest breakthroughs, probably all of them, came through the most unexpected sources and connections and things that I hadn't even thought about for years, or people that I met literally years ago in random cities around the world. So I love that advice for listeners. And obviously it is so relevant to the work that you do as well. So I'm personally excited for listeners to go see all the cool stuff that you're doing, because you and I talking about it and geeking out about it is one thing, but them going deeper, having a conversation with someone like yourself, going into taking all of this stuff and making it actionable inside of our businesses, that's where the real value is. So for listeners who want to find Nomad CPA, obviously I've teased the link a little bit, but Alex, I'm gonna kick it back to you. Tell listeners where they should go from here and how they can find all the cool stuff that you're up to.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Really, you said it at the start, nomad.cpa. I have LinkedIn, I have Instagram, I have X, but I'm really bad with social media. That's going to be my 2026 goal, is kind of ramping it up, and hopefully some clips from this will help with that. But send me an email. You can find my contact info on there. Schedule a call. I'm not going to charge anything, but if you want to learn about what services I can provide, if you want to just talk about travel and how you can maybe set yourself up to work remote and travel to different places, or what that lifestyle looks like, I'm pretty easygoing, so always happy to chat with anyone.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're dropping that link down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Although I would argue it's probably the easiest domain we've ever talked about for you to find, nomad.cpa. Don't throw a .com on there, just nomad.cpa. Super easy to find. You can click right on through from the show notes. We're also linking to Alex's personal LinkedIn. So you've heard how accessible he is here, how much he loves those connections. So if you want to have a deeper conversation and you really want him to get into the nitty-gritty of your unique businesses, then don't be shy about reaching out on LinkedIn. So Alex, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. It's a pleasure.